We have some time, and if you're okay to take questions.
Yeah.
You know, Larry can handle himself, but let me say, on that subject in particular, there may be some things that we can talk about.
Yeah, that's right.
So we'll start with the least likely person to ask about Scientology, Mr. Eggleston.
Okay.
Well, I won't mention the South Park episode on Scientology then. What was your experience in acting before the stuff you did recently?
Yeah, how much of this had you done? Did you walk on stage for my trip to Al-Qaeda and you'd never been in front of a camera or in front of an audience before?
No. When I started writing screenplays, I took some acting classes to see what actors needed.
Wow.
And Marco Perello was my acting coach, and it was really helpful. It's not. I certainly learned the limits of my capacity as an actor, but I also learned a great deal about the writing process. What actors see in a scene. You know, when I'm writing a screenplay, usually one scene is just a link in the chain that leads to the next scene. But when an actor gets a scene, it's the whole world. You know, you don't know what went on before. You don't know what's going to happen afterwards. It's the scene. And so I began to try to look at scenes from an actor's perspective. And I think it helped me not just as a writer of screenplays, but in all my writing, because I think scenes are they're the most nourishing feature of any kind of writing. You know, you have a great scene and you put it together with great characters, then that's what you're there for.
And having now gone through this not once but twice with the play about Gaza, are you done? Have you retired your SAG card effectively? Or
I never thought I'd do this in the first place.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd do it again. So I'm not going to say...
You will not be playing Richard Burton? Actually,
well, not.
No? Tempting though it may be?
Yeah. They're better men than I for that job, but...
Okay. Let me go to Ms. Spence and then come over here and then we'll go back.
Larry, when a bunch of us voted for Obama for president, a part of our passion for him was this belief that the wars would be cut short. Can you comment on what he's done or hasn't done, or is it out of his hand that is different than the way we thought it would be?
Well, in fact, you already said you didn't think they've done a particularly good job, right?
Yeah. I think that Obama came into office with a quandary and, you know, a very divided society about how to resolve these problems. And those divisions were reflected, for instance, in the military. They didn't know exactly how to handle this, and still don't. I mean, you know, you saw that when Petraeus took over in Afghanistan, his response is, you know, to increase the forces and increase the duration of the war. And that's directly at odds with what Vice President Biden had proposed. And Obama made a decision, you know, to go with the increased forces. Well, good luck. I hope that this turns out to be a good decision. I hope it winds up stabilizing Afghanistan. I hope that we're able to leave that society in a relatively secure place. You know, I think the chances of being able to accomplish that are small and will come at a great cost. But, you know, this is not impossible. And I really hope that, you know, having chosen that course, that it works out.
So if you're Ms. Spence and people like Ms. Spence and you're looking for an alternative on the horizon to get you to the place that you thought you were going, is there one out there? Are the politics of the country today situated to do what Ms. Spence and others thought we were going to do 2 years ago?
I think that we are lumbering into a place where we're going to have a tremendous reassessment of our place in the world, and especially the expenditure of our money and our troops in foreign ports. And it's not just going to be apropos of Afghanistan and Pakistan, Iraq. It's going to be apropos of our place in the world.
The Koreas are starting to blow up again, right? We know there's a lot of places in the world.
And we have an interest in, you know, trying to maintain stability. But we're going to have to be a lot smarter about, you know, we don't have the money to throw around. We have 2 wars on our hands already. We don't have the discretion to take on a third party. We have to reduce and narrow our focus. And I think that that's going to be the challenge in the next several years, is figuring out exactly what we can accomplish and how we how can we affect the world? My personal feeling is, in studying, for instance, Muslim reactions to America, the most powerful thing that we've done since 9/11 was our last presidential election, where we really transformed our society in a nonviolent way. And it's not that we're completely new people, but we made a big change in front of the whole world. We deliberated about the pros and cons of both of these perspectives, which are very divergent, and we made a choice. And then in the congressional elections, we made another choice. But these are democratic decisions, and they have, profound social ramifications, and they model to the rest of the world a way to affect change in society that's much more powerful than our trying to steer those societies by remote control.
Okay. Mr. McGee?
Weaned on the Al-Qaeda, I guess you're ready to be sort of the Salman Rushdie of the Scientologists.
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, great. Now you're going to have Mr. McGee has wished a fatwa on you from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
No question beyond that. You've just raised the specter of the threat level in the room from orange up to red now.
It seems
actually.
like today a lot of people don't do things and step out and talk because of that fear. And
Right.
I think you're a great example of being willing to sort of be reasonable in the midst of the madness, and hopefully that'll get bigger.
Well, thank you.
And now, Mr. McClure.
Larry, in a recent talk, a representative of Stratford here in Austin suggested that Osama bin Laden has been dead for some time, maybe a couple of years. What is your point of view on that?
I think there's absolutely no reason to believe that he's dead. And also, because he's put out, he hasn't put out a video in some years, but he has put out audio recordings that sound like him. Usually when somebody dies in the Al-Qaeda universe, we hear about it. They don't cover it up. There's a lot of chatter on the lines. They make martyr videos and so on. There would be something to be gained, too, from their perspective about having a massive mourning of bin Laden and create the martyr that he hopes to become. If you think of it from a tactical perspective, from Al-Qaeda's point of view, they get maybe some marginal, we're keeping it alive quality, but truthfully, if it turns out that he's been dead for years and we learn about it, then it's going to be a tremendous disgrace for Al-Qaeda. If we have a moment, I'll tell a story about how the CIA came to me with this idea that, after 9/11, Hollywood had done a much better job of connecting the dots, about terrorism than the American intelligence agencies. And so they decided to go to screenwriters and see if, they could ask them, in my case, to write a scenario about what we would do if we caught bin Laden.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding you. This is really the truth. And I said, well,
This is a movie. This itself is a movie.
I said, I am a journalist. I can't go writing screenplays for the CIA. But I'll tell you in the form of an op-ed for the New York Times, which I wrote. Yeah. And so my advice to the CIA, in the apparently unlikely but also hopeful scenario that they actually did get their hands on bin Laden, first of all, remember, he's the most famous man in the world. And he's going to be one of the most famous men in history. So if you have the good fortune to get your hands on bin Laden, don't kill him, because that's what he's expecting and that's what he wants. He wants to be a martyr, and that way his legacy will endure forever. And don't bring him right back to America, or certainly don't send him to Guantanamo. And but first of all, you could send him to Kenya, where in 1998, in August 1998, he set off a bomb that killed 211 people and blinded 150 people. let him sit in a courtroom in Nairobi and tell 150 blind Africans that he was just striking at a symbol of American power. And then you could take him to Tanzania, where on the same day he set off another bomb, killing 11 people, all of them Muslims. I think that would be a wonderful venue, since they said that because it was a Friday, good Muslims would be in the mosque. It would be a wonderful venue to ask, what is a good Muslim? What is the role of Islam in jihad now? And then you could bring him to America and have him answer for the death of the 17 soldiers on the USS Cole in October 2000 and the 3,000 Americans that died on 9/11. But after that, you could take him so many places. You could take him to Madrid, you could take him to London, you could take him to Bali, you could take him to Casablanca, Istanbul. I mean, there's so many places where Al-Qaeda has done so much harm. But just take him one last place, take him home. Take him back to Saudi Arabia, where hundreds of Saudis and expat workers have died at the hands of Al-Qaeda, and try him under Sharia law, which is the only law he and his followers would respect. And if he's convicted, he'll be taken to a square in downtown Riyadh called Chop Chop Square. And the executioner is a big man with a long sword. Saudi tradition is that the audience is composed of the families of the victims. And before the executioner walks out to the crowd and begs them to forgive this man. And if they can't do it, he does his job, and bin Laden will be taken and buried in an unmarked Wahhabi graveyard. And I think in that way you can kind of begin to roll back some of his awful legacy.
And what was the response to this? I mean, that's an extraordinary notion. But what was the response to this from the people who came to see you?
Well, I think they're still deliberating on how to get him.
Right. If I may, Mr. McClure, before I take the questioner behind you, why don't we have bin Laden?
Well, there are several answers to that question. One is he may not be where we say he is. I interviewed the director of national intelligence a couple of years ago, and where is he? Well, he's in the tribal areas, and that's the consensus. And the tribal areas is an area about the size of New Jersey. So if you said to the average American, we're looking for a man in New Jersey, you know, you get a sense of, well, it's a pretty big but not vast area. It's mountainous. It'd be hard to find him, but it's not impossible. We depend.
Maybe he's a Scientologist.
No comment on that.
You got no comment? Maybe he's at Travolta's house right now. But you think that the likelihood is that we will find him eventually?
I think that we will find him eventually, but he may not be in the tribal areas. I've been.
Family that moved into my neighborhood.
Spies.
I've said for some years that he might be in Yemen. Bin Laden himself said that there were really only two places for him, Afghanistan and Yemen. And he's got ancient family and tribal ties to Yemen. Very unorganized northern part of the country. It's completely a possibility. And if you spent 10 years looking for him in one place and haven't found him, maybe you should look somewhere else.
It might be a good idea to actually. I agree. All right, very patient gentleman with a hat behind Mr. McClure.
Just wondering if you've ever been tempted to turn your attention to Iran in great detail, right, about what's going on there and how it might evolve.
I am interested in Iran. I tried to get a visa for a year to go to Iran, and they wouldn't let me have it because I didn't want to go do a week or something like that, because I just don't think I would be able to grasp the society. I have written another play. It's about Oriana Fallaci, this famous Italian journalist, and I created an Iranian-American character in the play that winds up in Iran in prison. But it's my way of dealing with Iran. But I would love to go, and so I've been trying to think about maybe getting a university appointment or something like that that would give me a little bit more time and freedom of access.
Okay, I've been neglecting the questioners in the front, ma'am.
Could you talk about your time teaching in Cairo and sort of how that laid a foundation for
This is many years ago, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
In fact, there are pictures of you with the sort of 70s mustache.
Yeah, I wasn't too proud of that. I was a conscientious objector during Vietnam. And in order, you still have to do 2 years of service to your country. And I was, at that time, really sick of the argument about America and Vietnam. It was so contentious. And I just hated, I was kind of at war with myself and my father and my country, and I just wanted to get out of the country. So I went to the United Nations thinking that I could get a job at the UN. You had to have a job 50 miles from your home. It had to be very low paying. And it had to be nominally in the interest of the United States. So I thought, well, I could get a job at the UN and they'll send me far, far away. And they said, well, no, we don't do that. But here's a list of American institutions abroad. And one of the offices was across the street at 866 UN Plaza, was the office for the American University in Cairo. And I didn't know we didn't have any diplomatic relations with Egypt at the time, that there were only 200 Americans in the whole country, and they were trying to keep this university running. And so I walked across the street, and 30 minutes later they said, "Can you leave tonight?" No, I can't leave tonight. I got my girlfriend's back in Boston. I haven't told my parents what I'm doing. Can you leave tomorrow? I can go tomorrow. So I go back to Boston. I tell Roberta, now my wife, I'm going to Cairo for a couple of years. I don't know where that's going. And I called my parents from JFK and said, I'm catching the next plane to Egypt. And then I flew to Cairo, arrived at midnight, and taught my first class at 9 the next morning. So that was that's how I got plunged into Egyptian society. And I don't think I even knew what language they spoke. I knew that there had been a war there, but it wasn't the war that I was particularly concerned about. It was a fascinating period to be in Egypt.
This is what year?
69 to 71. It was when Nasser died in 1970. It was a transition period. The building, we were on this island in the Nile called Zamalek, and across the street was the Russian news agency, Novosti. And so full of, the place was full of Reds. It was in the university was like a CIA outpost, we later learned. And I got recruited. I got to be a tennis partner with one of these Russians, and became the subject of intense scrutiny, real fascination by all these people in the university that I later learned had other affiliations. And I called us the big powers. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
But just having a conscientious objector, American, playing tennis with this Russian reporter was
can't make it up.
Oh, it was something. But
right.
I loved that time. It was a wonderful, rich time, and I studied Arabic not because I wanted, I really just wanted to get around in the society, and that turned out to be very important later in my career, to be able to speak some Arabic and and have a familiarity with Arab society and with Islam.
Well, we could go on. I'm afraid that I'm being told we need to bring this one to an end so we can land this plane so the next one can take off safely. It is always a treat to see Larry in town. Let's give him a big hand and thank him for being here.